This is Fritz Stammberger with islandonlinenews.com, and it's March 11th, 2010, and I'm here with Albert Venczel. Albert, are you there?
Yeah, I'm still here. I would add, thanks for calling. I think the more people who get this message and are aware of it, the more good that can come out of it.
I agree with you, and we're going to talk a bit about remote viewing today. You're a remote viewer.
Right.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. The reason why I'm a person of interest is because I was supposed to be the son of Ingo Swann. I was supposed to be born in the Bowery. But what happened is, from my past life, I didn't fly into the light. I circled down, then went back up and merged with my higher self. And it was already set that Ingo should have been my dad. But I met him in, space. And I told him, he agreed to do everything that sort of happened. He said yes. I said, well, let's mess around with this and see what more we can find out. Unfortunately, what happened is he was injured in Korea. He's a eunuch. He got the Purple Heart, so he's not able to have children. So it reverted back to reincarnation, but I ended up getting born in Toronto.
Okay, and some people might not be aware of who Ingo Swann is exactly. Can you just tell us briefly about who he is? Sure.
He's but most well known as the father of remote viewing, which is sort of how ironic. But he was a natural born psychic, and he was part of a group called the Avery with Dr. Hal Puthoff and Jacques Vallée. They started in SRI in the 1970s. And then it later becomes the Avery, where the boss is the Colonel John Alexander.
Okay, and in your interview with Project Camelot, you mentioned about connecting with the signal on the top of the head using a paper and pencil. Mm-hmm. Can you talk about that for a minute?
Okay, so what happens is when Ingo is remote viewing, he goes into an altered state, and like when a baby is born, like a dolphin spout, that part of your skull is malleable, and a signal line just shoots straight out of his head like a big fireman's silver pole, and it connects to the matrix, which is outside of time and space and contains all knowledge, which he can download as a pattern of information using paper and pencil. But then also it runs down through his spinal cord, goes down to the center of Earth, a golden rod, which keeps him grounded. But the way remote viewing properly worked is his higher self, like he's fractured. His physical body is here on Earth, and his higher self is in space, and it flew to the distant location, remote viewed what he cued, then flew back to the signal line and touched it, and it downloaded on his head. So his brain is sort of like a giant antenna, and it's picking up signals from outer space. Then later on, like higher powers become involved, like the usual characters, like one of them, the devil or Lucifer, the other one is, God and the angels. But the proper way remote viewing was working for him is his higher self was flying to the distant location. One of his cues was the planet Saturn. It looked at the rings, then flew back to the signal line, and he downloaded it onto his head, where he was writing it with a paper and pencil. At that time he was meeting with Axelrod in an underground base.
Okay, and how do you know that information exactly?
Okay, at the time I was sort of acting as his helper. When I was a ghost, we were in the same soul group, like in the same sort of cell group in space. And when his higher self flew out, I would sort of trail him and follow, just keep tabs on what he was doing. And when I was able to, I would assist, like help to move things along in the right direction. So I was working with his higher self in space while I was a ghost, and I was like a whole ghost, while he was like a half a spirit. So I had both like a physical mass, and I was able to fly.
Okay, so you can remember then before this life and in between previous lives.
Right, I have a recollection of the time in between lives. Yeah.
Okay, do you have any idea about how many human lifetimes you've lived?
Oh gosh, I find Kabbalah to be the most accurate religion, except that they missed the part about Jesus being Christ. But if it's the 6,000-year Hebrew theory, and if we do the math, a person lives like maybe 80 years, right now we're in the Hebrew year, 5,737 or whatever it is. So divide that into 80. I haven't done the math, but we could have lived like 200 lives, saying that the Earth is 6,000 years old, approximately.
Okay, yeah, that's interesting. I was once told in a dream that I was 22 and a half lifetimes. So I was.
Actually, if I had, I could open the calculator. I should have done the math on this, but anyway, I would put. But sometimes we live more than 80 lifetimes. And the other thing is there's transmigration of the souls too. That explains like reincarnation, why we keep getting, our population keeps growing. People from other planets could reincarnate on Earth, and we can migrate to another planet.
Oh, that's interesting. We'll come back to that in a minute. I just wanted to ask you quickly about what you mentioned with the dolphins and the blowholes.
Mm-hmm.
Are you saying the blowhole has some sort of a metaphysical connection?
Yeah, that's where the signal line came out of the top of his head. And like when he's really in an altered state, you could actually visibly see it. It's like a silver cord coming straight out of the top of his head and going all the way to infinity, to the end of space, right straight up past the Milky Way galaxy, and it connects to the matrix outside of time and space, but it shoots straight up. Okay. Then a gold cord goes down to the center of Earth and keeps him grounded, so he doesn't fly off.
And do all humans have this, or is
all humans have it? But he was able to turn it into potential, like into kinetic from potential. Like all humans have it in potential as a frontal lobe activity. But in Ingo's case, he's like one of the forerunners. Because he was born a natural psychic. He was able to develop it more in himself with Shafika Kargula coaching him, like telling him, to look into mirrors, put magnets on his head, read the literature that other psychics have left behind and stuff.
Okay.
So he kept working on it until it really started, and through the Scientology Center as well, until it started really clicking for him.
Okay, and Shafika Kargula was who?
That was his mentor. She also lived in New York at the time he was in the Bowery, and she was also has ties to the intelligence community. She's a doctor, an MD. She worked in psychiatry, but he mostly knew her through the connections to the intelligence community. And he was at the same time like CIA, NSA already. He was already part from Korea or in the intelligence community, and they met in New York. And she was interested in psychic abilities, so she started working with him. Then they ended up meeting like Cleve Baxter, and they eventually get to Hal Puthoff. And then Axelrod becomes involved too. But in Dianetics, they call it exteriorization. And the reason why he liked that and joined with that church is the beginning of Dianetics, it gave good advice. It told him to look up words he didn't know in the dictionary when someone handed him a copy of it. And then once he read that, he still quotes the dictionary today. He wanted to see how Scientology, what the advice would be at the end. And once he got past OT3, the Wall of Fire, and they told him they believed in aliens and stuff, which is what he already believed, he at that time he was into it. But now he's sort of distancing himself from Scientology. He doesn't want to give any more credit to the place. But he changed the term from exteriorization to remote viewing and started to personalize it to his own experiences.